So many of us, including myself, thought Wicked for Good was going to be a major Oscar success, but on Oscar nominations morning, it got 0 nominations. What the hell happens? Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the awards contender and welcome to a new Oscars Fiasco video. I didn't intend to make one about Wicked for Good. I thought, at minimum, it would get into 2 or 3 technical categories. It got nothing a few weeks back. It is wild to me it could not break into a single category, not makeup or production design or costume design or song. At the end there, it didn't look very likely Ariana Grande was going to make it into supporting actress, but I thought it would still get into a couple technicals. 0 nominations? Yeah, we need to talk about this. This is absolutely the definition of an Oscars fiasco. So let's start with the reasons why many of us thought it was going to do well at the 98th Academy Awards. Reason number 1 was that Wicked, released in November of 2024, was a phenomenon. This thing took the world by storm, made more than $750 million worldwide, did very well critically, and I was so impressed. The performances by Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande blew my mind. All of those iconic songs, the production design, the costume design. I just thought Wicked was such a great film. It's somewhat flawed here and there. It didn't quite make my top 10 list, but I was so pleased with that film. It was everything I hoped the film version of Wicked would be and more. And when it ended on Defying Gravity so triumphantly, it really brought that song to life, and ended with the to be continued tease, right? We knew we were getting another film in a year. I just thought Wicked was so great. It did basically everything it needed to, with critics, with audiences. It was a phenomenon. And so, why wouldn't the second part also be a phenomenon? Maybe not quite reach the heights of the first film, but as long as it was 80% as good, I thought it would also get in at the Oscars. Reason number 2, the big one of course, is that Wicked got 10 Oscar nominations and it won 2. Best Costume Design and Best Production Design. So the Academy really embraced Wicked. I wasn't so sure, even though I loved it, so many people loved it. It's a big, glossy, blockbuster musical adaptation. I was like, maybe it just gets into 4 or 5 categories. Maybe it misses in a few key places. I mean, it didn't make it into director and screenplay and stuff, but Wicked did very well at the Oscars. I mean, getting into Best Picture and Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress, that was something. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande opening the show, they did such a spectacular job at the beginning of the 97th Academy Awards. It just felt like the Academy was really into this first film. Why wouldn't they be into the second? If they were open to giving Wicked 10 nominations, they were going to give Wicked for Good something, right? Reason number 3 was that because they filmed all of Wicked and Wicked for Good at the same time over many months, the quality was not going to dip. This was not a situation where you had maybe a different director on Wicked for Good, maybe some different cast members 3-4 years later. Everything was filmed at the same time, so there wasn't any evidence to suggest that Wicked for Good would drop off in quality. Maybe it wouldn't be quite as strong, but again, as long as it was pretty decent, people liked it well enough, it did well enough at the box office. Coming out in November again, this time in 2025, it made sense that Wicked for Good would do well at the Oscars, that it would be embraced enough. Reason number 4 was that there didn't appear to be too many blockbusters in 2025 that could be taken seriously as an Oscar contender. Usually the Academy nominate 2 films in Best Picture that are big money makers, movies that really hit with audiences. There didn't seem to be too many for 2025. We had F1 in the summer. And I don't know about you, I did not walk out of that film and think, oh yeah, Best Picture nominee. I did not expect that. And you also had Avatar Fire and Ash, and that was on our radar for most of the year. Since Avatar 1 and 2 got into picture, maybe the third one would also happen. But there wasn't much over the summer. I was like, the Academy is going to get a couple films in Best Picture that are big blockbusters, and Wicked for Good coming out around Thanksgiving, that just made sense to me. And reason number 5, this is one of the major reasons I thought Wicked for Good would be a big Oscars player, was that even though the first Wicked, it won in costume design and production design, it didn't win in picture, actress, supporting actress. I thought maybe they're going to wait. This will be a Return of the King situation where we wait until the entire saga is done, and then we get everyone back in again. Maybe Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande can win the second time around. I thought Academy voters might be waiting for the second film to drop. That's when we give the film a bunch of nominations again, and even more wins than the first time. Not to suggest that many of us thought Wicked for Good would be along the lines of Return of the King. I mean, that wasn't going to happen. You know, John M. Chu getting into director, Wicked for Good in picture, it wins in those top two categories. That was never going to happen. But in the acting categories, I thought there was a chance. Up until November of 2025, I thought Cynthia Erivo maybe could win Best Actress. Like maybe she could be Jessie Buckley's main competition there. And then after having seen the film, I was still on board Ariana Grande long into December. I think she is phenomenal in both films. I think she has a very nice dramatic arc in Wicked for Good. So I would not have been mad about her getting into supporting actress at the Oscars and maybe being in contention to win. I was all on board. I've talked about that on the channel. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, I never suggested Ariana Grande could get in. I saw the film and said, no. I walked out of Wicked for Good very happy. I am an anomaly there. I know most people didn't love this film. I thought it was pretty great. I liked how it was darker than the first one. I recognized it was deeply flawed, but I had an emotional experience. And I especially was taken with the Ariana Grande performance, so, you know, this has been a weird award season for me. It's been very strange. Like Wicked for Good getting 0 Oscar nominations? I mean, it's as if like the first Wicked was some kind of masterpiece and then the second one was one of the 10 worst films of the year, and that's not the case. I mean, that is freaking crazy talk if you believe that. You know, like, okay, I get it. I see it. I understand why people did not respond to the second film the way they did the first one. But for it to get into no category at the Oscars still doesn't make much sense to me. So let's talk about it. What do I think are the 5 main reasons Wicked for Good blanked out on Oscar nominations morning? I think the number one reason, the very obvious one, is that most people just didn't think the second film was as good. I think that's the most important reason. If this film had been as celebrated as the first movie, everybody's saying it's even better. Like, this is one of the great films of 2025, the Academy Awards would have told a different story. It would have gotten into picture, probably director, actress, and supporting actress again. It probably would have gotten into adapted screenplay. It would have gotten into all of the same technical categories it got in a year before. It also would have gotten into original song, maybe even 2 nominations there. If everybody in the world had looked at Wicked for Good the way I did, you know, and thought it was pretty great, I think the film would have done better on Oscar nominations morning, but because there was that thinking from most, like it's decent maybe, not quite as good as the first one, and because some really hated on it, you know, gave it a negative review, said it's not worth your time, because there was enough of a lackluster reception to the second film, that's why it was always going to struggle, like all the way until January getting in at the Oscars, it was going to be tricky. I mean, a lot of people recognize the problems in Wicked for Good. It goes all the way back to the stage production. Act 2 is not as strong as Act 1. The songs aren't as original and iconic the way they are in the first part of the show. The humor isn't there as much. It's shorter than the first act. Like I get it. Like there's problems in Act 2. And John M. Chu and company did the best they could with the material to make their second film as great as humanly possible. It worked for me, but not very many others. If there wasn't going to be enough enthusiasm about Wicked for Good, it was going to drop off. That was always going to happen. And because there was enough of that kind of response, I was getting nervous as early as December. I was like, yeah, this could get ugly, right? This could get ugly, and it did. Reason number 2 was the sequel problem. The Academy doesn't often recognize sequels, even though Wicked for Good I don't think of as a sequel. It's part 2 of the same story. It didn't matter ultimately. I do think enough Academy members said, we took care of this film a year ago. The first Wicked, like we gave it 10 nominations, we gave it 2 prizes. Do we have to give it more nominations? Wicked for Good is not being celebrated nearly as much as the first film. There was enough of that feeling with Academy members, been there, done that. We don't need to recognize all of this again. There was the same problem with 2024's Gladiator 2. That was kind of a been there, done that situation, not as well received as the first film, which won the Oscar for Best Picture. And so on Oscar nominations morning, Gladiator 2 just gets into one category, Best Costume Design. Many of us for months thought that film was a lock in Best Picture and Best Supporting Actor for Denzel Washington, probably 5 or 6 technical nominations at minimum. And then it only got into costume design. I was like, wow, that really fell off a cliff. Now, occasionally, the Academy will make exceptions. Dune from 2021 does very well at the Oscars. It won 7 prizes? And then Dune Part 2 comes out at the beginning of 2024, doesn't do as well at the Oscars, but gets into Best Picture, gets into technical categories. It had won 3 years before. But I think something that helped Dune Part 2, first off, it's an incredible film. I thought it was even better than the first Dune. And in terms of the Academy calendar, it was 3 ceremonies later. It wasn't 1. If Dune Part 2 had come out in 2022, I don't know how well it would have done. Maybe it could have gotten into Best Picture and stuff. But I do think having a little bit of window of time between Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, it did help the sequel, the second part of that story really, do well at the Oscars. If Wicked for Good, let's say, comes out at the end of 2027, maybe it does better. I think because it was only a few months between the two movies, that also hurt its chances at the Oscars. At the end of the day, Wicked for Good just wasn't good enough, right? It wasn't Return of the King. It wasn't like this landmark achievement in cinema history, right? The Lord of the Rings trilogy, each film just as strong or better than the last. And The Return of the King is an achievement, man. That was such a run of 3 films from Peter Jackson. The third one was always going to do well at the Oscars. Many of us were naive in the thinking that, well, maybe they're waiting to give Wicked for Good all of the prizes once the whole saga is done. This was not a Lord of the Rings situation, and especially once the film opened and wasn't received as well, and being a sequel released just 12 months after the first one, the Academy having that feeling, we have taken care of this film already. Yeah, it does make sense why Wicked for Good was going to struggle. Reason number 3 was the strong competition this past year in Best Picture and Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress. There were so many wonderful contenders in these categories, and the soft reception Wicked for Good received from those early precursor ceremonies like Golden Globes and Critics' Choice. We kind of knew in December, once we got nominations for Critics' Choice and Golden Globes, we were like, oh, shit, At Critics' Choice, Cynthia Erivo misses in Best Actress, and I was like, damn, that's not good. With 6 slots, Ariana Grande gets into Supporting Actress. It makes it a new picture at the Critics' Choice Awards. So I was like, all right, Erivo might fall off here, but Wicked for Good is still strong in Picture and Supporting Actress. And then at the Globes, Erivo is in, Grande is in, but the film misses in Best Picture Musical or Comedy. With 6 slots, I was like, wow, it couldn't even break in there. And some people were saying this is a Color Purple 2023 situation, and I was like, no, I refuse to believe it. Wicked for Good is not getting 1 nomination at the Academy Awards. I guess I was kind of right about that because it didn't get 1 nomination, it got 0, right? So I think the soft reception at those earlier ceremonies, it kind of gave permission to every other awards voter. Like, you can ignore Wicked for Good. You won't get hate for it. You're not going to be attacked. You can ignore this film and it's all going to be okay. I mean, on SAG nominations morning, the Actors Awards, I was like, oh, this is bad. Ariana Grande gets into Supporting Actress, Erivo misses in Actress, and it doesn't get into Best Cast. Wicked for Good missing in Cast, that was a huge red flag because the first film got into Best Cast at SAG, and Jonathan Bailey showed up with that shocker Best Supporting Actor nomination. So SAG voters a year ago went all in on Wicked, and then the second time around, they were like, alright, we'll give Ariana Grande a nomination, nothing else. I mean, we all knew that morning, man, things are not looking good for Wicked for Good, right? And then just all the competition in Best Picture and Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress. In a weird way, I think Ariana Grande in Supporting Actress might have been the closest Wicked for Good came to an Oscar nomination. Odessa A. Zion might have been in 6th place for Marty Supreme, but Grande was probably close there. It didn't happen, and then the film gets 0 nominations. It's just like, wow, okay, Academy. You really did not want to give this film a single shout out. Reason number 4 was that the 2 technical categories Wicked for Good had the best chance of getting nominated for were the 2 categories it just won at the Oscars a year ago, Best Costume Design and Best Production Design. And that's definitely a situation where the Academy probably was like, we just gave you a couple wins there, why do we have to nominate you again, like the same people again, for part 2 of the same story? I wonder if Wicked had not won any Oscars a year ago, it didn't win costume design or production design, I wonder if that had made a difference. Maybe it could have gotten at least into costume design, because the costumes in the second film are just as lavish and original as they are in the first film. Maybe that could have happened, but I think because those were the 2 easiest nominations for Wicked for Good to receive, and because it just won in those categories, that kind of makes sense now in retrospect why it was going to miss there. And then the first film got into visual effects, it got into sound, it got into film editing. Some of those categories were just too competitive, and because, again, Wicked for Good is not as beloved as the first film, it was easy for those branches, those voting bodies, to just push against it, put in something more interesting, like Seurat in sound. Give some other films, some smaller movies, a chance to shine. I mean, look at the makeup category, which Wicked for Good had a chance in. There's a couple films there most people have never heard of before, but they get to be Oscar-nominated films, and that's really cool. So Wicked for Good, at the end there, especially in January, when any enthusiasm people had for it in November, let's say, had really started fading, it was going to be tricky, like what category could it break into if it could still get 1 nomination? Original song, right? Reason number 5 Wicked for Good got 0 Oscar nominations was that the 2 songs in Wicked for Good that were new, that were eligible to get into the song category at the Oscars, just weren't memorable enough. I didn't much care for the Cynthia Erivo song, even though I really enjoyed Wicked for Good and liked it more than others. Her song, that new one, it was fine. I thought The Girl in the Bubble was the better one, but I wasn't wild really about either song. I feel like most people felt that way. There was no defying gravity in Wicked for Good, right? There wasn't something really astonishing. The 2 new songs written for Wicked for Good just were not at the level of most of the other songs in the 2 films. So I think that's why ultimately it missed in that category, why we get a strange kind of offbeat random nomination for Viva Verde. Like, man, they really did not want to put Wicked for Good into any category at the Oscars. We had to dig really deep there. So yeah, I mean, I'm watching the Oscar nominations back a couple weeks ago, and it eventually hits me near the end of that telecast. I'm like, Wicked for Good has not been mentioned once. It's not in costume design, it's not in production design, it obviously missed supporting actress for Ariana Grande, it doesn't make it into picture, it's not in sound or visual effects, it's not in original song, it got 0. Talk about the ultimate Oscars fiasco of the last few years, right? I mean, one of my favorite podcasts, This Had Oscar Buzz, gets to cover Wicked for Good, because it didn't get a single nomination and it absolutely was being talked about for months, for most of 2025 as being a huge awards player. Many of us thought it could win maybe actress, supporting actress, probably not picture, but there was absolutely a reality where Wicked for Good came on really strong, most people thought it was better, and it gets 11, 12 nominations and it wins like 5 or 6 at the Academy Awards. Like the second film does even better, and that did not happen, I'm sad to say. I think Wicked for Good should have at least 1 nomination somewhere. That should be an Oscar-nominated film. Again, I liked it more than others. I'm not like sad about it. I'm not crying myself to sleep like, Wicked for Good, like what happened? Like why aren't you at the Oscars? I'm okay, it's fine. But I do think it's a good enough film. It should have gotten into at least a couple technical categories. It should not have received 0. But then I remember all of the amazing films going back decades that have 0 Oscar nominations. So Wicked for Good is not a loser. I don't think of it that way. It was still a huge hit at the box office. You know, it made the money it needed. It has its fans. It's going to live on alongside the first Wicked movie. But yeah, it is still wild to me, wild, that Wicked Part 1 gets 10 Oscar nominations, wins 2, and then a year later, Wicked for Good gets 0 nominations. I mean, just wow. Just wow. That is absolutely, in every sense, an Oscars fiasco.